This podcast is rated E for explicit. The subject of toxic masculinity has been talked about more and more in recent years, as is evident by this piece recently aired on NBC News.
Rather than a question about just their friendships, which is how they heard it when they were 13 or 14.
No homo was used a lot among my straight friends.
Because of we don't want to seem as if we're being gay towards each other or saying gay terms.
That reveals the culture because the fact they're equating friendship with gayness is a part of American culture of masculinity. Somehow to be a boy, grow into a man, you have to be emotionless.
You met me in the midst of many things. Shedding skin, sprout wings, looking at life as a spiritual being through a human lens, having conversations with God about so many things. This show is your invitation. The poet God is the conversation. One of the things I envisioned in creating this podcast was to create a space where I could have conversations with men from different walks of life about subjects that may be sensitive or difficult to talk about at times, because I know it is true that men share some of the same challenges that women do, which is why I'm calling this series Men Too. And to kick off this series, I'm joined by Aman, a member of the board, who joins me for a rather interesting conversation about toxic masculinity and how it affects our ability to connect with each other. So we had what I thought was a wonderful conversation a few weeks ago. And one of the things that stuck with me from that conversation was when you were talking to me about what expectations have been placed on you as a man, and more specifically a black man.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, first of all, I just wanted to applaud you for bringing this to the forefront. I think it's really important to have conversations about things that make us uncomfortable, and it's especially dissecting why it's uncomfortable, instead of just letting it be at the surface level of, I don't want to talk about that because it makes me uncomfortable. Mm-hmm. We're kind of asking that question of why. Right. And I think for me, the background is less about, what my parents or family members may have placed on me from an expectation standpoint. Mm-hmm. I think it's more of a societal thing, and kind of realizing that growing up in certain circumstances, specifically here in America, we are hand-fed in a lot of ways everywhere we turn, a very formulaic approach to way things should be from a successful standpoint. Mm-hmm. Whether that be kind of what I talked about, going from when you're very young, it's about, going to school and being successful in school and mm-hmm. making friends in school, getting good grades, becoming, whether it's a male or female, we kind of have these different avenues that they push us towards. For a lot of boys, young boys, it's mm-hmm. these sports avenues. Right. It's basketball, it's football, right. It's soccer. It's not ballet. It's not. it's not dance.
It's definitely not ballet.
And I mean, I can recall, friends of mine, two brothers. Mm-hmm. They grew up, probably I would say mid to low income housing. Very, very different. One of them ended up being an incredible dancer and really? Ended up going to Alvin Ailey. And the other one was an incredible basketball player. Mm. And I would say that neither of them necessarily found the inspiration necessarily from a school standpoint, but they were able to express themselves in different ways. And I can only imagine the dichotomy of what they went through, especially with the older brother kind of being this amazing, incredible dancer
right.
during a time frame where dancing really wasn't promoted for young black men.
Wow.
And the younger brother kind of seeing that and recognizing that that wasn't who he was necessarily, but he had to deal with that. And did he kind of absorb that experience and become, put up a bigger bravado when he was in the so-called streets?
He had to deal with people knowing that his brother was a dancer?
Well, not even just knowing it, but using that as, ammunition, to put him down,
right.
or to, use as kind of like a push point, a push button point.
Right.
Whether or not, I don't know how, I wouldn't be able to talk about the intricacies of their closeness as brothers, but I'm sure it put a strain on him in the sense of, he obviously recognized that was his brother. He loved his brother, but, societal pressures kind of put some kind of expectation of him on him, like, oh, are you going to be a dancer like your brother? Are you soft? Are you this? Are you that? And it may have shaped him into something that, he wasn't necessarily destined to be. So, I think in general, I do look at my own experiences, but more than anything, I just kind of look around, and as I've gotten older, I've really taken a step back and questioned, like, why do we have these kind of pressures on us? Why do we place them on us? Why do I get questions at work about, who I'm dating and if I want to get married and if I want to have kids and all of these things, when my experience tells me from my friends and from, even some of my family members that it isn't as simple as, you go and find somebody that you love, you enjoy that close-knit relationship, you get married, you have kids, and all of a sudden you're supposed to be happy for the rest of your life.
Voila.
Right. It's something that it's a kind of a broken in the sense that, we've talked about this as well. Like,
right.
People are flawed, and to assume that you can take individual people who are flawed and put them together, and all of a sudden you have a perfect molded situation and experience. It takes constant work. It takes that sacrifice. It takes the compromise. And not to say like I am against that,
right.
but I think it's a major assumption to assume that that is the only path towards happiness. I think you can still become a fulfilled person with great connections, and it doesn't necessarily have to be a marriage. It doesn't have to be, you have to have kids or whatever it may be. Like, you shouldn't feel like a so-called failure or you're behind in life because you haven't accomplished these particular things by a certain age, basically.
And, as you're saying that, I'm wondering, have you experienced dating a young lady who has that mindset that you can tell that from the time she was a little girl, she was thinking about this fairy tale, these ideals that she may have gotten from her parents or whomever about this is what, you should expect. And some of it, I'm sure that whole fantasy is reinforced by the movies, the romantic comedies, that whole thing. But in reality, does it make it difficult or more difficult in dating situations? Or even if it's not a dating situation, it's just you're interacting with somebody who you may like, and it's just a social, casual thing, but still, because this is how they think, it comes into play on some level in terms of them interacting with a man they may have some level of interest in.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's a big, the most important piece is those outside influences and like that kind of programming, so to speak, whether it's on TV or it's on, a parent or a loved one kind of telling you like, these are the things you need to be looking for, and this is what you should have in order to be fulfilled and happy. And I think especially as people get older, men or women, regardless, like they tend to look at their past experiences, and yes, there was some good and yes, there was some bad, but at the end of the day, those experiences ended and dwindled at a certain point. And the more that happens, I feel like whether we want to admit it or not, we start to allow that internal pressure to build within us to, oh wow, now I'm 30, now I'm 32, now I'm 35, and I haven't found that person, and I haven't built that kind of close knit relationship to the point where I could get married or I could start a family. And I think also for women, it's tough, like the ones that would want to have their own children. You know, scientifically, it becomes tougher as you get older. So that there's a natural pressure within that that shouldn't be ignored. Right. But I think for me, you know, I think I do tend to raise red flags when I hear those kind of subtle reminders really early on in interactions about, you know, that like, I'm not here to play games, or I want, you know, I'm looking to settle down. And I don't think expectations are a bad thing necessarily, but I do believe that expectations can kind of trick us into believing things are not what they actually are. And it allows us to make sacrifices about our true identities and what really is a good companion for ourselves, because early on you're trying to kind of create this impression that you're able to fulfill, you know, what is expected of you based on that person's expectations, which are a lot of ways built through those programmings, through those experiences.
So I kind of feel like you're like they're prematurely trying to cross T's and dot I's when the words don't have any T's or I's in them. Right. Exactly. Right. Exactly. I mean, I think that's exactly the way that I think I understand it as well. And it's like, I think people get taken back when, you know, when especially within a dating realm, like if I don't immediately say like, I want this X, Y, and Z, because one of the things I've realized through past experiences, I had that mindset. I had the mindset of, I really want to settle down. I want this companionship. I do want family. I don't, you know, whatever realm that may be. Does that mean 1 kid, 2 kids, 3 kids? Who knows? I mean, when I was younger, 20, I mean, I was like, man, I want to have 5 kids. But, really? You know, when I saw like the amount of work it took to raise 1 kid with people that I really care about and love, I was like, oh my gosh, how could you even go beyond one of these crazy things? Like, and I also take it seriously in the sense of, you know, I don't just like, I mean, it's a kind of a weird analogy, but I love dogs. Like, I'm a big dog person, and I would love to have a dog, but knowing that my schedule, the way that it is right now from a work standpoint, and I love to travel, would it really be fair to that dog to bring a dog into my life that I wouldn't be able to spend the time with that I want to spend with them? And I don't feel comfortable just paying somebody to raise my dog. Right. So not that dogs and kids are the same thing, but, more so like, you know, you want to, if I'm going to have a kid, like I want to be all the way there. I want to set them up for success. I want them to feel love. I want them to understand that stuff, especially at such a young, impressionable age, because I mean, there's plenty of studies out there that showcase, you know, those kids that don't have that kind of support when they're growing up, whether it be from one parent or both parents or no parents, they tend to develop issues with connectivity amongst other individuals that, you know, end up causing other issues to societal things. So
we'll be right back after these messages.
I am so excited to be a part of the wonderful world of podcasts, and to celebrate, I'm giving away a copy of my book, Lies I Never Quite Believed, which averages 5 stars on Amazon and iBooks. Now, a drawing will be held after each episode of Season 1. All you have to do to enter is subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on whatever platform you happen to be listening on. And then send me a screenshot at poetgodmail@gmail.com. That's poetgodmail@gmail.com. This giveaway is only eligible for listeners living in the United States of America.
Before we sat down for this conversation, both Aman and I listened to an episode of Hidden Brain called The Lonely American Male, and we pick up the conversation as we share our thoughts on that.
I want to get back a little bit to what we kind of touched on earlier about
how these traditional ideas of what it means to be a man can handicap us from connecting with each other, not just as friends, with your male counterparts, but also in relationships, that are more romantic. We both actually listened to this episode of Hidden Brain before we started talking, and I wanted you to listen to it because when I initially listened to it, I remember talking to a couple of friends of mine about it. It was an episode called The Lonely American Male. And it really, really hit home because I could think about so many men in my life, older, younger, who show a lot of the signs of just not being happy, just not being able to connect with other people.
Yeah.
And it's just really, really sad because a lot of times they don't have the language to articulate those feelings as such.
Yeah.
It's I'm bored. Mm-hmm. Especially if they're younger.
Yeah.
I'm bored, or I'm depressed, or whatever. Yeah. And also in the interaction with them, you can really tell when someone is for lack of a better word, starved.
Right.
For just human, not just human contact, but meaningful.
Right.
Human contact,
Yeah.
And to be able to have somebody to listen to them and be able to hear what it is that in some cases they're not really able to say.
Yeah.
And it just breaks my heart, especially for men, especially for Black men, because we aren't always given the permission to be in that space,
Absolutely.
to even say, I just want to be loved and appreciated and accepted and understood.
Yeah, I mean, I think like everything, as I've gotten older, I've tried to define things a little bit more. Like, what do you mean by meaningful relationship? So not you as an individual, but more so the internal person. So if somebody were to say, how was your weekend and what did you do this weekend? Was it an opportunity for you to go and escape some of the things that you're dealing with in your day-to-day life at work or at home? So especially as a male, like if we are, say I was in a relationship or I had a family, right? And I'm dealing with financial pressures. I'm dealing with, philosophical differences with my wife over how we should raise our daughter or son. And work's not going as great as it should be going because, I'm busting my butt and getting things done, and I'm showcasing that I am of value to my supervisors. But every time I come and ask for a promotion, it's, well, we need to wait on this, and we need to wait on that, or you need to showcase this or that, and you're not getting that fulfillment, right? So when I do have that weekend time to myself, and it truly is to myself because my wife is off with my son or daughter, and I'm able to kind of get away and go see some of my friends. What are the things that I'm really getting out of that? Am I trying to go into that with the mindset of, I just don't want to think about anything. I just want to escape.
Right.
Let me go watch football for 3 hours.
Right.
Or am I willing to kind of dive into it a little bit more? And within those time frames, when you're actually out watching football with your friends and you're in a safe place because they are your friends, can you take the time to truly dive into what's going on with yourself to vocalize it? Because one of the things that was really, captivating about that conversation within the Hidden Brain piece was the idea that, you when you tend to kind of fall into your own brain and your own cycles, things tend to bottle up. And in a lot of ways where you may consider something to be a really big hindrance or something that an obstacle that you just never feel like you can overcome, when you take the time to actually talk to someone that you care about, you'll be surprised that they're willing to give you information and listen to it as opposed to just telling you, hey man, just, toughen up and just kind of, deal with it. Like, you'll be fine. Like, you got a great wife, you got kids, you got a great job, you like your job. Like, instead of being dismissive of it, I think it's, hopefully you do have those kind of friends that are willing to kind of listen to you, offer some advice and kind of help you realize that some of those things that you feel like are this huge obstacle in front of you aren't actually as terrible as they are, or they'll at least help you think of other ways to find solutions for it, right? Because at the end of the day, like, you want to be able to find that growth, find those solutions, find ways to work around these things that obviously we all deal with throughout life. I mean, it isn't all, roses and cherries and rainbows and all of those things. I mean, we deal with major bouts of negativity. We deal with major bouts of not being sure of ourselves, self-esteem issues, and pretend like those things go away after you graduate high school is a huge misunderstanding and assumption about who we are as individuals and especially as men. And I think we need to take that time to really trust and ask for that opportunity to be a sounding board with our friends and tell them in turn that it's okay for them to do it as well, because it's got to be a two-way street. It's not something that you can just only take and not give, and I think in some of the more recent conversations that I've had with some close friends, I've learned a lot about that a lot of them have sought help, professional help, and
for depression.
I don't know about depression. I mean, I wouldn't want to define it as that, but just because at that point they may not even know where they're at within that cycle. It's right. It's such a convoluted topic and expression of feelings and emotions and behavior that I think just to be able to open up the conversation and just let things out, that's the first step. Whether you define it as depression or overstressed or whatever, aggravated, whatever, like, you're not going to know that until you at least attempt to take it outside of your own mind. Yeah. And kind of explore it. You got to explore it with other people as much as you think, you may have the best approach to things. And, I'll get this a lot. Like, Aman, you're real easy to talk to. You're someone that you just listen really well. And I appreciate that, I can come to you and tell you things and you provide me with direction. You don't tell me like I have to do it this way. You kind of like are very suggestive and careful with how you approach and provide that kind of information and for lack of a better word, guidance and advice. But that doesn't necessarily mean like I am somebody that can do it for myself. Like it takes people from outside of me to help with those things and to give me the best thought starters to be able to find those solutions, because you can't only rely on yourself in a lot of this, as much as you think you may have all those things. And that's why psychiatrists go to see psychiatrists. I mean, they're not. That's true. They're not. True. They have their own. That's true. It's important.
And I was just thinking, it's difficult. It really is difficult, especially for somebody who hasn't already been even prepared to have that language to express those things. But it's also difficult for somebody like me who does, finding a way to express myself and articulate things that I want to say is not something that I struggle with most of the time. But I do find that, and thinking about the piece the episode that I published on the podcast called Just Not Today, I was, on my way from home one day, and I was just kind of in a space where I was more or less depressed, but not depressed in the way that I typically define it. But it was just a feeling of not wanting to feel about it, not wanting to think about it. I didn't even want to talk to myself about it.
Yeah.
And so when you don't even want to talk to yourself about it, the last thing you want to do is to talk to somebody else about it. Right. And
even though that's probably what you need most.
Exactly. And but then to even go further than that, why don't I want to talk to anybody about it? Why do I don't want to talk to myself about it? And I was thinking about it the other day, as I was listening to that episode again, And what came to me is that sometimes it's really stressful to talk to people, especially if they don't listen well. And I find that when people don't listen well and they respond to what you're saying with these kind of dismissive, kind of cliche terms that kind of tell you one or two things, you're not able to hear me, or I can't trust you with this level of vulnerability that I would have to be in order to share with you like this. And so when that I sometimes I can't risk that. I think when you're in an emotionally vulnerable place, and the more that is the case, the less you're going to be willing to do. The less willing you're going to be to take a chance. Yeah. And open up. Yeah. You know what I'm saying? With somebody who has not shown you that they can that you can trust them like that. So I get it. Like I said, and it's knowing that for myself. And I'm able to find a way, whether it's with through art, as I often do, or through having and making a good choice as to which particular friend I think can handle that conversation. Yeah. Either way, I'm able to find a way, but a lot of people don't have either. Yeah. And I can't imagine what that must be like for them, because I know for me, when I am able to express, it just feels like breathing. Yeah. It just feels like I exhaled. For sure. And everybody needs a space to exhale. Definitely. And it obviously it could literally kill you if you don't.
So please find a space to exhale. We'll be right back after these messages.
Hey guys, I'm Joseph, a member of the board, which is what Akil refers to as his community of friends and supporters.
We all have something valuable to give. And sometimes it's as simple as giving someone else a reason to live.
On behalf of all the board members, I want to thank you for listening to our podcast. Akil's success is our success, and we want you to be a part of the community we are building.
It's not enough. It's not enough.
Because you are the very foundation we must build it on.
It's not enough to tell people that they matter. We have to show them. Like my friends showed me.
So tell a friend, leave a review, and keep in touch. We want to hear from you because it all matters, just as you do.
Do women play a role in shaping a man's idea of masculinity? Well, we pick up the conversation talking about that up next.
I think the female role I've found is pretty powerful, and how that young man thinks about what it means to be a man.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I think, specifically within the lens of the, Black family or people of color. Right. We, for a lot of reasons, which that could be an entire podcast on that alone, there are many single Black mothers out there with young sons. Right. And from the moment those sons are born, their father is either locked up, or has already left the situation. Whatever the causality of that may be, this Black woman, and a lot of times, kind of has to wear both hats, and they're doing their best to, be the support system as a mother, but they're also trying to create this, machoism or masculinity within their young sons, because they don't, in a lot of ways, they don't want to see the same thing happen to their sons, in the sense of their sons having children and then immediately becoming absent from those children's lives. Right. So it could create a pretty you know, for lack of a better word, a system where you are in a sense, you know, putting these undue pressures on young men to be a certain way, to act a certain way, to be the rock, to do these other things. And, you know, as that young man becomes older and that mother has put so much into of herself into raising that child and being both father and mother in the same person, you know, that tends to take their toll on the mother as well. So that when you get to that high school age, that older age, that male son has to kind of be that rock of the family. He has to try to be that positive influence and not as the emotional as you know, they probably should be. So I don't, you know, I think from the woman's role standpoint, I think it's still, none of these things live in a vacuum. You know, there's programming, there's societal pressures, there's things that are creating, you know, expectations among them, and then also for their young sons, and how that manifests is, you know, in a lot of ways, not allowing them to kind of develop their own emotions and allowing them to feel good about talking about their emotions, and they do become very protective, right, of their mothers. That's true. And they have this kind of bravado approach to things. And, you know, everybody's different. How that manifests in their future relationships, whether that's with women, whether that's with men, whether that's their friendships or whatever it may be, it's something that is underlying, and it could, you know, create systems or opportunities for them not to really showcase their true selves, or in reality, never recognizing or understanding what their true self is, because they've kind of been pressured to bottle some of this stuff up, and to kind of not allow it to manifest, you know, outside of the household, right? I mean, that's a big thing in, you know, families, especially, I hate to generalize ever, but, you know, Black families as well, is, you know, we keep a lot of this stuff behind closed doors, right? We don't want the outside world to understand it and to see it. It's a perception thing, you know. We are the happy family. There's so many broken families out there. We don't want to be one of them. Right. But the reality is, inside those doors, you're more broken than anybody that is actually showcasing how broken they are. And that becomes a major issue when it comes to you know, especially younger people growing up in that experience, because what they're taught is to be secretive, is to be untrue when they're out in society. And the reality is, they're going to be out in society much more than they're going to be within that household. Right. And they're taking that so-called baggage with them into these other experiences, into these other relationships. And in a lot of ways, they're not being able to truly have fulfilling connections, which is a detriment to themselves, but it's also a detriment to the people that they come across in their life experiences.
Yeah, because somebody has to deal with the wreckage, you know, the wreckage from these scars, really. Yeah, and regardless of wherever they came from and who is to blame, it doesn't really matter, because on the other side of it, whoever they interact with is going to have to deal with that on some level.
Yeah. And I think, you know, as a society, especially here in America, like, we very much like to point fingers and blame something. And it's easier to point and blame one or two things than it is to kind of look at the overall, you know, complications and complexities of the human experience. Like, we are very complex individuals. As individuals, we're complex, but then when you start to add other individuals to that, their experiences create exponential complexities. And that's why it's like, you know, when people say, like, well, you know, is it this or that or the other? It's like, well, it can't be just this or that. That's not what science teaches us. That's not what experiences teach us. All of it. It's a lot, and it becomes very difficult to unravel. And I think that's another reason why people tend to kind of close themselves off to it and either say, you know, they don't want to talk about it, or it was this one thing. And neither of those are, in my opinion, the best approach, or, you know, to be able to get to a really important conclusion when it comes to understanding this at a deeper level.
That's why I like shows like A Million Little Pieces and 13 Reasons on Netflix, and some of these other shows like I forget the other one now that everybody watches, but they speak to that truth that, especially like in 13 Reasons, where the girl commits suicide and so forth, and I think people who don't understand the series or the fundamental message of the series, they think it's about blame, and it's not about blame. It's more talking about how the entire experience informed her final decision to take her life.
Right.
And how all of these different experiences affected that on some level. And of course, there's enough responsibility to go around, and people need to be responsible and conscious of the experience that they create for other people.
Yeah.
That's your part. How and what did you do to either, were you part of the solution or were you part of the problem?
Right.
One of the characters said to somebody else who was asking, well, why and how could he do this and all of this? And was it because I did this or was it because I did that? And one of the other guys said, no, it's a million little things.
Yeah.
That all kind of add up.
Yep.
And that's, so don't feel like you did anything specifically, because it's all of it.
For sure.
It's all of it. And I think that's a really, really important kind of thing to understand when you're talking to people who might be having that experience.
For most of my boyhood, I've listened to men who I had little respect for attempt to share their unsolicited opinions on what a man is or should be. I've seen them suffer in their emotionless prisons they built for each other, where they exchanged their identity along with natural human emotions to personify a well-steeped lie that serves so well to bind and tie them to a limited experience of humanity. And because misery likes company, they are constantly punishing and pursuing those who do not subscribe to their ideology. Theirs is a toxic masculinity. We don't get to choose our family, but as adults, we can choose who we want to be in the world. And as adult-aged males, we can redefine what it means to be a man in a way that serves us better than what we were given. I've decided I'm not living in anybody's prison. I'm Akil Johnson, the Poet God. Thank you for listening.